Heretics of Dune, Dune Series 5 by Frank Herbert. The Golas Dilemma. In the ancient, shadowed hall of Gamukip, during the final years of the Padishah Empire, the air was saturated with the pungent aroma of melange and the palpable tension of impending choices. Reverend Mother Xuangyu halted her measured strides before the youthful Gola. Duncan Idaho, whose lean frame and piercing blue within blue eyes, a hallmark of spice saturation, stood in stark contrast to the dark tapestries that adorned the walls. "Why do you look at me like that?" Duncan inquired, his voice a blend of youthful uncertainty and the resonance of a seasoned warrior. Xuangyu ceased her pacing and regarded him with a softened gaze. "You are an amalgam of countless lifetimes, Duncan. Each step we take must be deliberate, for your journey is strewn with perils, both manifest and hidden." Duncan's nod conveyed his grasp of her solemn words. Visions of his previous incarnations, the myriad lives he had led, and the pivotal roles he had played in the universe's vast saga flickered through his mind. Elsewhere in the keep, Lucilla grappled with her internal strife. Despite Mother Superior Terraza's explicit warnings to distrust Xuangyu, she found herself collaborating with her. The dichotomy of allegiance and obligation gnawed at her, rendering her uneasy. "Mentor Teg advises that I should trust my instincts," Duncan spoke up, shattering the quietude. "Yet, how can I rely on them when their origins are uncertain?" Xuangyu observed him with a look that mingled worry and respect. "Your instincts are woven from threads of antiquity and novelty, Duncan. They are uniquely yours, yet they echo the annals of history that flow within you." As they conversed, Miles Teg watched discreetly from the shadows, his astute gaze capturing every nuance. He had been instructing Duncan in the martial disciplines, but he was acutely aware that the boy's tutelage encompassed more than just combat. Conflict is waged not solely with armaments, Teg had imparted to him earlier. It is waged with insight, comprehension, and the valor to confront one's deepest apprehensions. Duncan shifted his attention to Teg, seeking counsel. "What if the trepidations I face are not my own? What if they belong to a man who has long perished?" Teg advanced, placing a comforting hand upon Duncan's shoulder. "You confront them as he would have, bravely and with lucidity. Remember, the Golas that preceded you were not failures. They were precursors to something grander. You are not shackled by their destinies." Their dialogue was interrupted by Darwi Odradi's entrance, her aura exuding confidence and resolve. "The era for reflection has passed," she proclaimed. "We must take action, for the sisterhood, and for the destiny we endeavor to forge." Duncan, Xuangyu, Lucilla, and Teg exchanged knowing looks, each cognizant that the resolutions made within these walls would resonate through time. The quandary faced by the Gola was not his alone. It mirrored the sisterhood's pursuit of dominion, governance, and the molding of fate. With a resolute nod, Duncan straightened, prepared to embark on the path before him, a path entwined with subterfuge, warfare, and the unraveling of his authentic identity. The Gola's conundrum was, in essence, a microcosm of the Bene Gesserit's vast aspirations, and Duncan Idaho was poised to enact his role in the complex ballet of power and endurance. The web of ambition. In the chamber, Lady Janet stood before the holographic display, tracing the trade routes. Miles Teg watched, filled with curiosity. "Why do we trade with the Tlaalakshu?" Miles asked. Lady Janet faced him, her expression composed. "Enemies can be valuable allies in the dance of power, requiring a keen mind." Miles considered her words. "What of the Gola? Why is father involved?" "Duncan Idaho is essential," she said, pointing to the display. "He must be prepared for what's to come." The door opened, and the Tleilaxu envoy entered without announcement. Lady Janet addressed him directly, swiftly concluding the discussion with favorable terms for the Bene Gesserit. Miles observed, recognizing the subtleties of his mother's negotiations. He understood the importance of his future role in their intricate plans. Shifting allegiances. In the dimly lit chamber of the Bene Gesserit stronghold, Mother Superior Taraza and Tylwyth Waff, the Tleilaxu envoy, were finalizing a historic agreement. "Your concerns are noted, Waff," Taraza said. "But this alliance will fortify both our houses against the honored matres. In exchange for Atreides genetics, we will provide you with enhanced security measures, and the first selection from the offspring will be yours." Waff, reassured by the clear terms, nodded. "We accept. The Tleilaxu will honor this pact and expect the same from the Bene Gesserit." As they sealed their pact, Miles Tegg briefed Duncan Idaho on a new mission that would test his strategic acumen, rather than dwell on his past. "Duncan, you are to lead a covert operation on Gamma. Your insights as a Gola are invaluable." Duncan, understanding the weight of his task, accepted the challenge with a resolute nod. Meanwhile, High Priest Took observed the proceedings with a wary eye. The alliance had implications for Rekis, and he knew he must navigate these treacherous political waters with care. His role as the spiritual leader of Rekis was now intertwined with the fates of these powerful factions. A new figure emerged from the shadows, a mentat named Sajak, whose analytical prowess was unmatched. "High Priest Took, I have information that could sway the balance of power on Rekis," Sajak whispered, hinting at secrets that could change the course of history. The chapter concluded with the Sisterhood's plans progressing, alliances solidifying, and the fate of the galaxy resting on new developments, strategic minds, and the cunning of a mentat. The political landscape was evolving, and Rekis stood at its epicenter. The game of power continued, its outcome more unpredictable than ever. The Hidden Chamber. As Darwi Odrade descended the ancient steps into the chamber, her voice echoed off the walls. "Look at this place," she whispered. Beside her, Shiana gazed around in awe. "It's so big," she said. They walked further in, and Shiana stumbled. "Careful," Odrade cautioned. Shiana's eyes widened as she noticed a dark line in the dust. Was someone else here? "Long ago, searchers came looking for the tyrant's horde," Odrade said, scanning the chamber. Shiana followed Odrade to a narrow stairway. "Where does that lead?" "To answers," Odrade replied, "and to a discovery that will change everything for the Sisterhood." At the top of the stairs, they found themselves in a hidden chamber. "We found it," Odrade breathed. "The Horde of Melange." "But why is it here?" Shiana asked. "It's a message from the past," Odrade said, "and a weapon for our future." Odrade knew this discovery would secure the Sisterhood's independence and give them leverage against their enemies. "We must use this wisely," she said to Shiana. "For the Sisterhood, for the galaxy, and for the legacy we will leave behind." Shiana nodded. Together they turned back to the stairway, ready to face the challenges ahead with new resolve. The Labyrinth of Intrigue. In the dimly lit corridors of the Bene Gesserit chapter house, Darwi Odrade moved with silent grace, her thoughts as intricate as the tapestry that adorned the ancient walls. She was on her way to meet Miles Tegg, the Mentat General, whose loyalty and strategic mind were as legendary as his lineage. "General Tegg," Odrade greeted, her voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber they had chosen for privacy. "Mistress Odrade," Tegg replied, his eyes sharp and assessing. "I trust you have news about the Gola project?" Odrade nodded, her expression serious. "Indeed, this explains the Sisterhood's interest in your prescience." Tegg's brow furrowed. "And what of the Gola, Duncan Idaho? Is he the key to our survival against the Scattering's threats? He may well be, Audrey admitted. It's a role of great importance, Miles, one that could change the course of our future. Teg absorbed the information, his mind already racing with strategies. Then we must act swiftly. Audrey's eyes gleamed with a mixture of pride and concern. Your understanding of these matters is why you were chosen, Miles, but we must also consider Shiana. Teg nodded, his thoughts on the young priestess. She is a powerful piece on the board. We must ensure she remains under our protection. The conversation shifted as they discussed the labyrinth of political intrigue that surrounded them. Teg shared his insights into the enemy's mindset. As they parted ways, Audrey's final words lingered in the air. Remember, Miles, in this labyrinth of power and survival, every move we make must be precise. Our legacy and the future of humanity depend on it. Teg watched her leave, the revelations about his family and his role within the Bene Gesserit settling heavily upon him. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with peril, but he was ready. After all, he was Miles Teg, and he would navigate this labyrinth to ensure the survival of his sisterhood and the legacy they protected. The perilous escape. Miles Teg, the seasoned mentat, wiped the sweat from his brow as he led the Gola Duncan Idaho through the winding, overgrown trails of Rakis. The sun was a relentless force above them, and the shade was their only respite. Teg's muscles ached with the effort, but his mind was sharp, calculating their next move. Keep your eyes sharp, Duncan, Teg instructed, his voice barely above a whisper. Hunter-seekers could be anywhere. Duncan nodded, his own training kicking in as he scanned their surroundings. I remember something about them from before, he said. The memories of his past lives flickering within him like distant stars. Lucilla followed closely, her gaze darting between the two men and the skies above, where thopters could appear at any moment. We must move quickly, she urged, the urgency clear in her voice. They moved in silence, the only sound their soft footsteps and the distant call of desert creatures. Teg's mind raced with strategies, paths, and plans. He had memorized the map of this area, now destroyed to keep it from enemy hands. Suddenly, Duncan stopped, his hand raised. Do you hear that? He asked. Teg listened. A faint hum in the distance. It was the sound of an approaching thopter. This way, he said, leading them into a narrow crevice between two towering dunes. They huddled together, covered by a makeshift camouflage of desert cloths. As the thopter passed overhead, its searchlights sweeping the sands, Teg thought of the sacrifices made by those who had given them this chance. The weight of their loss bore down on him, but he pushed it aside. There was no room for grief in the desert. Once the danger had passed, they continued their journey. The night was approaching, and with it a slight reprieve from the heat. We'll travel under the cover of darkness, Teg decided, a plan forming in his mind. Duncan's eyes were on the horizon, where the first stars were beginning to twinkle. What about other dangers? He asked. We'll deal with them if we must, Teg replied. For now, our focus is escape. Lucilla's voice was soft but firm. Our fate is our own to shape, she stated. Teg met her gaze, the unspoken truth hanging between them. They were all bound by duty and destiny, but within that, they had the power to shape their own paths. With the night as their ally, they set out once more, the desert vast and unknown before them. Their escape was perilous, fraught with unseen dangers, but they were determined. For freedom, for legacy, for survival, they would face it all, together. The power play. The chamber was dimly lit, the walls lined with ancient texts. The air thick with the scent of spice. Audrad stood at the center, her gaze fixed on Waf, who sat across from her. You know why you're here, Waf, Audrad began, her voice steady. The Sisterhood requires your cooperation. I have little choice, Reverend Mother, Waff replied, a hint of resignation in his tone. We can help each other, Waff. Your knowledge of the Tleilaxu's plans is valuable to us. In exchange, we offer protection. And what of the control over the production of melange? Waff asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. The control over melange, or the spice monopoly as it's commonly known, is secondary, Audrey lied smoothly. Our primary concern is the survival of our respective orders. Waff considered her words, weighing his options. And the Honored Matres? What of them? The Honored Matres, a formidable and aggressive group seeking dominance, are a threat to us both, Audrey replied. An alliance, however uneasy, is our best defense. As they discussed the terms of their alliance, Audrey's mind raced, calculating each move like a chess player. She knew the alliance was fragile, but it was a necessary step in the Sisterhood's grand strategy. The power play between the Bene Gesserit, the Tleilaxu, and the Honored Matres became more intricate. Audrey's manipulation of Waff and the looming threat of the Honored Matres set the stage for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the Sisterhood and the galaxy itself. In the shadows, Miles Tegg observed Duncan, a Gola, a cloned individual with potential ancestral memories. The Sisterhood's future hinged on unlocking the memories of this enigmatic figure, and Tegg was determined to succeed. The power play was a dance of diplomacy, strategy, and survival, with each player holding their cards close, aware that the next move could be their last. The Final Gambit. The night was alive with tension as the stars twinkled like distant observers to the unfolding drama on the planet below. In the heart of the Bene Gesserit keep, a clandestine meeting was taking place, one that would decide the fate of many. Miles Tegg, the seasoned military strategist, stood before Mother Superior Audrey, his eyes reflecting the weight of the moment. We must act swiftly, he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The Honored Matres are not known for their patience. Audrey nodded, her face a mask of calm. And Duncan, is he prepared for what is to come? Tegg's gaze shifted to Duncan, who stood silent, his eyes betraying a hint of uncertainty. He has been briefed and understands the stakes involved in our plan. In the shadows, Shiana watched, her young mind racing with the implications of their plan. Under Audrey's tutelage, she had learned much, including the ability to command the sandworms. Now, she was to use this unique power to create a diversion, leading the sandworms in a display that would draw the Honored Matres' attention away from the true movements of the Sisterhood. Lucilla, the adept of many faces, moved closer to Tegg. The diversion, she whispered, will involve Shiana and her command over the sandworms. It must be convincing. Tegg nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. With Shiana's skill, they will be convinced. By the time they realize the truth, it will be too late. As the group dispersed, each to their role in the daring plan, Audrey remained behind, contemplating the complex web of strategy and sacrifice. The stakes were as high as the survival of an entire way of life. The future hung in the balance, a future that would be shaped by the courage and cunning of the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. Duncan, now fully aware of his identity as a Gola and the role he was to play, stood ready to face the challenges ahead.